So you've stayed with me for 7 parts of this series. Let's try to bring this all together. Let's look at the big picture and get a little crazy. In part 1, I introduced a faction called the Alliance of the Reasonable, the Botleys, the Harlaws, and the Blacktides. They are the anti-war, pro-Greenlander party with connections to Old Town. In parts 4 and 5, I explained how they are likely the instruments of House Hightower and are responsible for killing Balon with the help of House Mallister. Their motive for killing Balon was to bring about Lord or King Theon. Theon was captured at that point, and so the Ironborn would be forced to sue for peace and end the war. Later on, Theon becomes an instrument that can nullify the Kingsmoot and end Euron's reign. Theon also lacks a penis, so the Kraken cannot wed the dragon and cannot bring about the Long Night. Incidentally, Theon is a Greek name that means godly. This means that when Euron was going around saying that no godless man may sit the Seastone chair, he was accidentally saying only Theon can sit it. Now in part 6 I explained how the Alliance of the Reasonable is desperately trying to get Theon back, and how Theon is central to the Battle of Ice. He knows the Dreadfort, and Dagmar Cleftjaw is not to be forgotten. On the opposite side of the world, in the Battle of Fire though, we have men that are trying to wed the Kraken to the dragon. Victarion has arrived with a dragon horn, hoping to bind dragons to his will, and I imagine with that, leverage over Daenerys. However, as I explained in part 7, it seems that this horn is more likely to control slaves than dragons, and acquiring a slave army seems to be the goal of a mysterious character known as the Corsair King. As I explained in part 3, the Corsair King is out of the Basilisk Isles. He tried to purchase a slave army just days before Daenerys' rebellion. He also raided the Summer Islands, which likely got him some slaves, and it seems Daario helped in the selling of some slave soldiers as well. These events seem very much linked to Euron. We know that Euron was in Slaver's Bay watching Dany get her slave army. We know that Daario wants to start war in Slaver's Bay and even attacked the Peace Faction's camp. War in Slaver's Bay would put slaves in the field. And we know that half of Victarion's fleet, the faster half, goes missing around the Basilisk Isles. Not to mention that Barristan is training a knight from the Basilisk Isles named Tumco, who seems very familiar with the Greyjoy banner. No matter what one thinks is happening in Slaver's Bay, one has to accept that Daario's slaves and the faster half of the Iron Fleet are unaccounted for. As is this Corsair King, whoever he may be. What also is unaccounted for are Moqorro's missing weeks. After Moqorro is blown off of the Celisori Quran, the ship drifts for 19 days. And it drifts off the southern end of the Isle of Cedars, the same place Victarion later waits for his fleet. On the 20th day, Tyrion and company are captured by slavers. Now, based on Victarion's journey, it seems to take at least 6 days to get from the Isle of Cedars to Meereen. Once in Slaver's Bay, Tyrion spends an unknown amount of time in Yezzin's camp, maybe a few days, before heading to Daznak's pit and seeing Daenerys ride off. The ship Giscari Dawn then takes this news back to the Isle of Cedars, and the ship is captured by Victarion. The point being, it's been over a month since Moqorro was swept off of the Celisori Quran, and yet he claims he was only in the water 10 days. Now yes, the Vole may have had him for a few extra days, but 25 days? Moqorro knew about Victarion's location and his hand. He couldn't have gotten this information from his flames because he was in the water. And although it's quite possible that he simply deduced this information, it would be a lot easier if an Ironborn picked him up and told him this information. For example, one of the faster ships that could be loyal to Euron. The point being, Euron's creatures are everywhere, and Moqorro is likely another one. Euron captured 4 warlocks, so these warlocks could be lurking all over. Daario could be a warlock. Moqorro could be a warlock. The Dusky Woman could be a warlock. And as I mentioned in part 2 and part 7, both Daario and Moqorro seem to have issues with their appearance. They may be glamoured. But what about Euron? Is he who he claims to be? Well, I will say it's a bit odd that Euron looks exactly the same as he did 3 years ago, but there are a few things that make me think that Euron is Euron. Victarion thinks there is no wine so sweet as wine taken from a foe, and he believes he heard this from either his father or Balon. Euron later speaks this line, so either Victarion actually heard it from Euron, or Euron heard it from his father or Balon. Either way, Euron seems to be the real deal. Additionally, Euron starts talking about his dreams of flying. This talk is very weird and very sincere. Someone impersonating Euron would unlikely go on like this. But let's talk about these dreams, because after all, why is Euron doing all of this? Why is Euron going through all of this trouble to bring about the Long Night and serve him? Well, like many other characters in our story, Euron is plagued by dreams. At a young age, he had dreams that he could fly. When I was a boy, I dreamt that I could fly. When I woke, I couldn't. Or so the maester said. But what if he lied? Perhaps we can fly. All of us. How will we ever know unless we leap from some tall tower? Now, maesters trying to dismiss dreams is a pretty common occurrence in Westeros. Crescent tells Shireen that her dragon dreams are meaningless. Maester Tomon tells Tiora Toland that her dragon dreams are meaningless. And Luwin tells Bran and Rickon that their crypt dreams are meaningless. Now, it's not just dismissing a dream's meaning. Maesters seem to have drugs that supposedly suppress dreams, although they aren't very effective. Luwin gives Bran a chalky potion to suppress a dream, although it's not very successful. This seems to be the same potion that Maester Coleman gives to Sweetrobin. That is, the powerful drug Sweet Sleep. It should be noted that Sweetrobin, Bran, and Euron are all obsessed with flying. Now, it goes without saying that dragons can fly, and Euron does seem to have an obsession with dragons. He tries to hatch a dragon egg, and he sends his Ironborn to Slaver's Bay to get dragons. I think it's a pretty safe bet that Euron's obsession with dragons comes from his dreams about flying. And it's probable that Euron dreamed about dragons as well. After all, everyone else in Westeros seems to be dreaming about dragons. Now, Euron's flying dreams seem to be like Bran's, and at least Bran's first flying dream is sent by the Three-Eyed Crow. Bloodraven encourages Bran to fly. But are all of Bran's dreams sent by the Three-Eyed Crow? After all, we know of at least 3 other people in Westeros that can send dreams. There's Maester Marwyn, who sent dreams to Aemon. There's Quaithe, who sent dreams to Daenerys. And there's the Shrouded Lord, who sent dreams to Tyrion. Now, I do believe that Bran's second dream and Euron's dreams have been sent by the Shrouded Lord, though not necessarily the same Shrouded Lord as it's a position. And there's 3 elements in Bran's second dream I'd like to focus on: a tower, stone men, and the moon. Let's first talk about this tower. In his dream, he was climbing again, pulling himself up an ancient windowless tower. Now, it seems Euron's dreams also involve a tower. While Bran does spot some castle towers in his first Three-Eyed Crow dream, a tower is certainly not the focus. His first dream revolves around him flying around the world. And I'm not sure why the Three-Eyed Crow would send a dream about Bran being unable to fly after he just sent a dream about Bran being able to fly. Next, let's talk about some stone men. The gargoyles watched him ascend. Perhaps they had once been lions, but now they were twisted and grotesque. He must not listen. I didn't hear! Now, yes, dreams can mean a lot of things, but it's hard not to admit that on some level, these stone lions are supposed to represent Cersei and Jaime. The gargoyles are coming after Bran just as Cersei and Jaime did, after he heard what he wasn't supposed to hear. But this isn't the only time Lannisters are compared to gargoyles. Tyrion is called a gargoyle in every single book. And if I'm right about the Shrouded Lord, aka the Stony King, being Garyon Lannister, then he would be a gargoyle as well. After all, he's the king of the stone men. Finally, let's talk about the moon. Far above him, outlined against a vast pale moon, he thought he could see the shapes of gargoyles. Now, the moon and moonlight appear a lot when people are having crazy dreams in our story. Eddard is in moonlight when he dreams about the Tower of Joy. Jaime is in moonlight when he dreams about Brienne and what's underneath Casterly Rock. Jon seemingly hears a message from Nymeria thousands of miles away through the moon. Quaithe appears before Daenerys in moonlight. And Catelyn loses hours sitting in the moonlight with her father, Hoster Tully. We'll get back to talking about that incident. The point being, people seem to be invading people's dreams around the world. And at least for some of these methods, the moon seems to be an essential part of it. It seems to be almost a relay station, a satellite, if you will. Which is ironic considering the moon is a satellite. Now, the idea that the moon is a spy satellite is not lost on our characters. Tyrion thinks that the moon is watching him when he's on the Rhoyne. This is, of course, before Tyrion starts having multiple dreams about the Shrouded Lord. So I'd say that, like other characters, the Shrouded Lord is using the moon to spy on people. Now, with multiple characters using the moon, it's very difficult to determine which characters are invading each other. But I'd like to focus on who was messing with Catelyn's mind right before she released Jaime. Now, Catelyn has been in a room with her father, Hoster, who has been dying. We're not sure what Hoster's disease is, but this is his description of it. The crabs are in my belly. It's pinching, always pinching, day and night. They have fierce claws, the crabs. Maester Vyman makes me dream wine, milk of the poppy. I sleep a lot. Now compare that to this speech by Euron. I have heard the prayers.
Cure my withered leg, make the maiden love me, grant me a healthy son, save me, succor me, make me wealthy, protect me. Protect me from mine enemies, protect me from the darkness, protect me from the crabs inside my belly.
Crabs inside my belly. For some reason, Euron knows what's inside Hoster Tully's head. Whoever was watching Hoster communicated this information to Euron. Now, as I've said previously, many people have the ability to invade dreams, but it would make sense if it were Garyon Lannister. After all, the person that was messing with Catelyn's head wanted Jaime released. Wanting the Kingslayer freed is something the Lannisters wanted. And all of this makes me ask, is Euron a servant of the Shrouded Lord? I will say that Euron would make an ideal servant to the Shrouded Lord in that he's likely immune to Greyscale. Euron's older brother Harlan died of the disease, so Euron may have had a childhood exposure to it. Like the chickenpox, a childhood exposure is safer and leads to a lifelong immunity. The disease can cause disfigurement and blindness, so I wonder if that's what happened to Euron's eye. It may explain why Aeron hates Euron so much. Something happened with Aeron, Euron, and their younger brother Yuri. Some people think Euron molested the two, but what if Yuri caught Greyscale and Aeron blamed Euron? Yuri having Greyscale would explain why he would participate in the finger dance. Regardless, a Greyscale immunity would help explain why Euron and the Shrouded Lord would want to bring about the apocalypse. Having stone extremities may help in an apocalypse of ice or an apocalypse of fire, but it would mean absolute victory in an apocalypse of plague. If dragons are nuclear weapons, then Greyscale is a biological weapon, and those that can endure the apocalypse will inherit the earth. Now before we say goodbye to the Ironborn, let's talk about one final threat. The threat that's growing inside Asha. So we know that Qarl the Maid had sex with Asha, and she forgot to take her moon tea. And he didn't just have any sex with her, he had Lord's right to the first night sex. Asha was wedded to someone else, but Qarl bedded her first. This practice has been banned in Westeros for over 100 years. However, it used to be practiced by Northerners and Valyrians. Valyrian bastards produced from a Lord's right were called dragon seeds. And here's the thing, Qarl's family is a family of thralls. We have no idea what kind of blood is in his veins. All we know is he has light-colored hair and can't really grow a beard. So I have to ask, did the Kraken wed the dragon? Was the Lord's right relevant? Is Asha carrying a dragon seed? Only time will tell. Once again, I'm probably wrong about half of this. But at minimum, I hope I convinced you that the Ironborn are not just a bunch of pirates. They are weaved into everything and are essential to the end of our story. And next time, I'm going to be talking about not just the big picture, but the huge picture. The dreams of Bran, Sweetrobin, and the children of the Forest. In a very crazy way, I'll be talking about what's really, really going on.